This will be a brief program because we want you to have a wonderful time tonight at the White House. We thank you for doing so much to support the White House Endowment Fund and for your commitment to ensuring that this house, the People's House, remains the pride of our people well into the next millennium. No one has been more committed to making sure that this house is for all of our people than the First Lady. Over the past 5 years, Hillary has worked so hard to showcase the talent and creativity of all Americans in each of these grand and historic rooms, from refurbishing the Blue Room to securing the first painting by an African American or the first painting by Georgia O'Keeffe for the White House's permanent collection. Her contributions to this house will remain a long time after we're gone from Washington. Let me say it was in no small part because of her dedication that the 1.5 million visitors who walk through the White House every single year have been able to enjoy the richness and diversity of America's cultural heritage. I thank her for her leadership and for making this house on all floors a more wonderful and truly historic place to live. And now, in reverse of the usual order, it is my pleasure and honor to introduce the First Lady of the United States.
Thank you. Well, no, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. It is indeed an honor and a pleasure for me to join the President in welcoming all of you here to the White House for this celebratory dinner. There are many of you who deserve individual thanks, and I hope that each of you feels the gratitude that all of us who have worked on the Endowment Fund and worked to cherish this house feel toward you. I particularly want to acknowledge Bitsy Folger, the current chair of the Endowment Fund, Dottie Craig, the former chair of the Endowment Fund, Bob Breeden, the chair of the White House Historical Association, who has been with the association, you won't believe this by looking at Bob, since its founding in 1961. George Herzog, the president of the White House Historical Association, and Neil Hortzman, the executive vice president of the association. I also want to thank Bernie Meyer, the former executive vice president of the White House Historical Association, Gary Walters, our chief usher, Rex Scouten, his superb predecessor and then the curator, and Betty Monkman, the current White House curator, for their very hard work every day on behalf of the White House. Now, many of you know that the endowment was first conceived by Mrs. Carter, but it didn't really get off the ground until Mrs. Bush made a commitment to it in 1990. And when I inherited that responsibility from Mrs. Bush, I was delighted that so many of you here, friends of the Bushes, friends of the White House, had made significant contributions toward reaching the goal that had been set of $25 million. You were halfway there, so I could sigh a big sigh of relief and know that with hard work we could finish the job. Well, thanks to so many of the people who joined this effort starting in 1993 up to the present. In fact, the Endowment Fund received a gift of $50,000 today from someone who could not make the dinner and felt so bad about missing it. So we're dissolving the Endowment Fund this evening because we have more than reached our goal, in fact, have exceeded the $25 million goal set. Now, since the Endowment Fund has done so well, I hope you've had a chance in the time before dinner to visit with the curators, to look at the pictures, and to see the results of your hard work and contributions. From the East Room with the refinishing of the marble and the new rugs, to the Blue Room, which was completely redone, to the Red Room's rug, and then to the further projects that are going to be either nearing completion, such as the refurbishing of the cross hall, both the carpeting and down the grand staircase and the upholstery on the furniture as well as the draperies, and then a soon-to-be recommended project by the White House Preservation Committee to take care of some badly needed work here in the state dining room. So in so many ways, what you have done has already made its mark on this great house, and none of it would have been possible without the concerted effort of everyone in this room and without the leadership of the first chair, Dottie Craig, and the second chair, Bitsy Folger. So as someone who lives here every day and gets to walk through these magnificent rooms, I want to express a personal word of appreciation, because so many of you have understood the importance of preserving this house and making it the very best reflection of what America has to offer. And to set your mind at ease, those of you who may have heard the rumors, I have no intention of either recommending or permitting the return of the moose head to the state dining room. Now it is my great pleasure. I've already been asked about that, so I thought I'd better get on the record quickly. In fact, I don't think we know where that poor old moose is. I'd always thought that President Theodore Roosevelt had shot it himself. That was one of the stories, but we later learned he'd actually bought it in New York. So even if I were enthusiastic about the moose, I don't think that's authentic. But it is now my great pleasure to introduce the two women who have led this effort, and we're sorry that Mrs. Bush couldn't be with us this evening. She sends her regrets, but certainly she is well represented by Dottie Craig, and I am so pleased that my good friend, Bitsy Folger, was able to finish the task that was started. So let me now introduce to you Bitsy Folger and Dottie Craig.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us on this celebratory occasion. I said when I walked in tonight, this feels like a family getting together. There's so many people who are here who have worked on this from the beginning, who have worked on the White House, and who have joined us during the Clinton era. So it just feels very good, like we're all here, all of us who love this building and are devoted to keeping it pristine. Mr. President, you're so right in what you say about the First Lady. She has been an inspired leader to our board in her role as honorary chair of the White House Endowment Fund. As a matter of fact, you might almost think she was a regular board member because she has been active whenever possible in our work, and always so gracious. The First Lady brought us together here at a luncheon for our first meeting. She continued to attend our meetings throughout the last 3 years, and she helped us in our fundraising efforts until we met our goal. I am indeed honored to have had the opportunity to spend these past 3 years raising the funds to permanently secure the beauty of this magnificent symbol of our democratic way of life. I thank you, Mrs. Clinton, for appointing me to this position. And now I would like to present you with a resolution of appreciation from our entire board. Thank you so much, Bitsy. A similar resolution will be presented to Mrs. Bush, our former First Lady. We are really so sad she couldn't be with us tonight, but we do have Dottie Craig, our first chairman of the Endowment Fund, who will now say a few words to you. Dottie?
Thank you, Bitsy. Thank you. Well, first I want to say, as you all know, there is no one who could represent Barbara Bush. She is unique unto herself. But Bitsy gave me the great privilege of thanking everyone. And first of all, I want to thank President Clinton and Mrs. Clinton for their wonderful support of this effort, which, as Mrs. Clinton said, has been ongoing since 1979, and their gracious hospitality tonight to those of us who could come is really remarkable and much appreciated. I want to tell you a little anecdote. When I was chairman of the endowment fund, I had the great privilege of entering the White House through the north door as a member of the Committee for the Preservation of the White House. And Gary Walters welcomed me there, and I walked in and I said, "Gary, every time I enter this house, I get a real thrill." And he said, "Dottie, so do I. And when I do not, I will know it's time to retire." But this effort will now ensure the well-being of the White House for the future. The endowment fund is a permanent endowment that cannot be entered, and only the income from the endowment can be applied to the preservation and the maintenance of this beautiful house. It took a great deal of effort by a great many people to achieve our goal. And I want to thank the members of the White House Preservation Fund, and we have one representative here, Linda Kaufman, the members of the Endowment Fund Board, and I will not list names because I'm sure to forget someone who's here, and all of those who were not here, who gave generously and worked very hard to achieve the $12,500,000. And the members of the Clinton board who worked equally hard. And then there are many, many people in this room who were not members of the board, but who dedicated themselves to the success of this fundraising, and without whose efforts we would not have achieved our remarkable goal of $25 million. Each of you knows who he or she is, and do know that you have my heartfelt gratitude for what you did for us in order to ensure that the People's House, the White House, will forever represent our country as it ought to be represented. Thank you.
Again, I want to thank Bitsy and Dottie and all of you, and to remind you that the year 2000 is not only an auspicious occasion for the millennium, but also the 200th anniversary of the habitation of this house, starting with President John Adams. So there will be much that we expect to do to highlight the historic events and the furnishings and the art collection of the house over the next several years leading up to that anniversary. And none of it would have been possible without your support and your conviction about the importance of this house, not only to our country, but indeed to the entire world. Thank you all very much.